Hello, welcome to the YTUC webinar. My name is Pat Harrison and I'm the Senior Associate Director of Admissions at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. I appreciate you joining me today and I'm excited to speak with you a little bit, help you learn more about the Tuck School of Business and why it's such a special place to earn your MBA. And then after a brief presentation about the school, I'm really excited to take any questions that you have about Tuck or about the application process. So I'd like to start with a little bit of a history lesson. Tuck was founded in 1900 by two people who were ahead of their time. William Jewett Tucker, who was then the president of Dartmouth College, and Edward Tuck, who was a successful financier and actually William Jewett Tucker's college roommate. And you know, it's funny, you think back to 1900 and it's easy to forget, but back then the United States itself was really just an emerging market. And Tuck and Tucker recognized that for future U.S. business leaders to be successful, they would need a different kind of education. They would need one that was provided specific business training. And this was really radical thinking at the time, and it led to something just as radical, the world's first graduate program in business. Now fast forward 115 years, Tuck is still as forward-looking as ever, and we're at the start of a new era. Matt Slaughter has just taken the helm as the new dean of Tuck. Matt's been on the faculty since 2002, so he has a deep appreciation for the values that have always made up the foundation of Tuck. But at the same time, his expertise in global economics, plus his incredible energy, enthusiasm, and vision will really help Tuck lead the way for the future of business education. Now, back when Tuck started, we had 4 students. Now, our student body has grown quite a bit since then, but with only 280 students per class today, we still maintain a personal scale which provides an unprecedented level of access to faculty, recruiters, and classmates. You're not just a number at Tuck. Our students come to Tuck from all over the world, spend 2 years with us challenging themselves and growing as leaders and collaborators, and they leave ready to make a difference for the companies and organizations they join after Tuck. Now, I'd like to help you better appreciate the Tuck experience, and to do so, I'd like to introduce you to 3 of those students, all members of the Tuck class of 2015. First, meet Raphael Bonacci. Raphael is a French and Italian citizen, and after studying economics and finance in Brussels and the UK, Raphael began his career in Paris at Société Générale in their mergers and acquisitions group. From there, he headed to London, where he worked in corporate finance for Daiwa Securities, and then strategy and corporate development for the Beasley Group. Raphael came to business school looking to broaden his knowledge beyond economics and finance that he already had training in. And he found that Tuck's extensive first-year core curriculum provided him with a rigorous foundation in all of the essential aspects of business, both the hard skills and the soft skills. Then in his second year, he was able to customize the program to meet his particular interests with a wide range of electives and opportunities for independent study. When he was writing his dissertation at the University of Warwick, Raphael relied extensively on publications written by finance expert Raphael Laporta, who you see in this picture here. When Raphael arrived at Tuck, he was thrilled to discover that Professor Laporta was on the faculty. In addition to the 2 electives he took with him, they also developed a personal relationship outside of the classroom, in which Professor Laporta became a trusted advisor on many issues from academics to career advice, and he often encouraged Raphael to think differently about an idea or an opportunity. That kind of personal access to the faculty is really a hallmark of the Tuck education. Not only are our professors leading thinkers in their fields, but they also love to teach and engage with the students. Having a global mindset is a critical skill that business leaders must have in order to navigate the different cultures, countries, and markets in which they'll work. To facilitate that learning, Tuck has implemented the Global Opportunities, or GO program. Through GO, 100% of our students will participate in at least one immersive experiential class in another country during their time at Tuck. And this can be satisfied in a lot of different ways. So it could be through global insight expeditions, where students are traveling to a country with a faculty member. It can be on-site global consulting, international first-year projects, or through exchange programs. Raphael took full advantage of the international opportunities while he was at Tuck. During his time, he did 2 Global Insight expeditions, one to China and another to the UAE and Qatar. He also completed a consulting project in Uruguay, working on logistics for a cargo shipping company. And finally, he spent a term studying abroad at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. And these kinds of experiences really provided Raphael with in-depth perspective into those countries that you can't get as a mere tourist. During first-year recruiting, Raphael told the Career Development Office, or CDO, that he was interested in a non-traditional internship. When he arrived for a one-on-one meeting with his career coach, he was surprised to find multiple members of the CDO sitting around the table, each ready to offer their particular expertise to his search. This kind of team-based, personalized approach to supporting Raphael is a prime example of the Tuck culture in action. Now, Raphael ended up receiving multiple job offers for his summer, including very traditional ones like working for the portfolio company of a private equity firm in the U.S. But ultimately, thanks to support from the CDO, the Center for Business and Society, and another Tuck professor, Raphael ended up taking a very different path. He ended up in the Middle East working on a real estate development project that provided affordable housing for families in Palestine. This was an inspiring project that Raphael said he wouldn't have thought of outside of Tuck. Now, this past June, Tuck alum and overseer Carlos Rodriguez Pastor spoke at graduation. Carlos is the chairman of Intercorp in Peru and also one of the most successful businessmen in Latin America. He is also a committed philanthropist and is working to better the Peruvian education system and make it more accessible to all. During his graduation speech, Carlos encouraged students to go their own way, to welcome challenge, and to measure their success by their ability to change the world. And I encourage you to watch the video of his speech on our website. It's truly inspiring. Like Carlos and Raphael, Tuck students and alumni are committed to using their experience not only to do well in their careers for themselves, but also to make a difference for others. Next, meet Lindsay Wyndham. Lindsay is from Winter Park, Florida, and attended Vanderbilt University. Lindsay arrived at Tuck after working as a high school English teacher with Teach for America and Yes Prep Public Schools in Houston, Texas. Coming from a non-traditional background, Lindsay was really looking for an opportunity to develop her business and analytical skills and to explore new careers and industries. She found that our supportive community really allowed her to step out of her comfort zone and contributed to her success at Tuck. If you've done your homework on Tuck, you've heard about our close-knit community. Time and again, students will share stories about how uniquely supportive and collaborative our community is, how study groups will spend hours upon hours helping each other learn the material and prepare for class, how students assist each other in the job search, even when they're both applying for the same positions. And as Lindsay explained when she was discussing her nerves over that first cold call in class, she found the classroom atmosphere to be supportive and non-critical, where it's perfectly okay to ask questions, to challenge a classmate, or even get something wrong, because the learning is enriched from that discussion that comes of it. Tuck's community creates trust between students and allows them to become comfortable enough with each other to take risks and put themselves out there. And when you're able to take those risks, that's when you really can learn. Another thing that Tuck's community supports is the opportunity for students to engage in and lead multiple clubs, conferences, and other activities. Lindsay is a perfect example of how our students immerse themselves in opportunities at Tuck. Lindsay was president of the Women in Business Club, on the steering committee for the Initiative for Women, a fellow in the Center for Leadership, a member of the Quality of Life Committee on the student board, played in one of Tuck's many hockey teams, and last but not least, she was lead singer in the Tuck band. Lindsay dove into her work as head of the Women in Business Club, and she championed efforts to include men in conversations about gender equity. She was able to directly apply what she learned in classes like Leadership Out of the Box and the Psychology of Strategic Leadership. And that's really a great example of how your learning at Tuck will extend beyond the classroom. The culmination of the first year is the FYP, or the first year project, where students put into practice what they learned in the core and apply it to real-world business challenges. Lindsay's FYP team had a marketing project to increase brand awareness for a major skincare and beauty line. They identified an audience that the client had not yet tapped into and made recommendations how to reach that group by realigning their social media strategy. The team got valuable practical experience, and the client got great advice. Now, many other schools have similar capstone projects, but what differentiates Tuck's FYP program is the ability for students to customize their projects. You choose the project, you choose your team. Students can opt for a consulting project or an entrepreneurial venture. It can be domestic or international. If there's a particular industry you want to get experience with, you can do that. And this is really great for those students who are making a career switch. Our students have done consulting projects for Under Armour, Wayfair, Brooks Sports, and Stafford Capital Partners, just to name a few. Now, if you're an entrepreneur and you're planning to start your own business, you can get a jump on it with the FYP. For example, one of our students started a business called Fresh Air Sensor, and this is a device that detects tobacco smoke in the air, and it can be used for hotels to know in real time if people are smoking in their rooms. This is an idea that Jack got from a chemistry professor during an entrepreneurship pitch night held at Tuck. Jack started working on the project as an FYP. He further developed it in the Summer Business Incubator, got funding for his company during the second year, and now 1 year after graduation, his company is starting to install products in hotels, and they just won an entrepreneurship competition that was sponsored by Steve Case, the founder of AOL. Last but not least, meet Jasper Wright from Brooklyn, New York. Jasper is a graduate of Baruch College and worked at Bank of America Merrill Lynch and the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation prior to attending Tuck. Now, for those of you who are coming from large cities and maybe hesitant about Tuck's location, Jasper has spent his entire life in New York City, but he loved his 2 years in Hanover away from the distractions of living in a big city. Jasper said it gave him, being in a small town like Hanover, gave him the space to think and allowed him to really focus on himself, his MBA, and on developing relationships with his classmates. Because our students either live on campus or very nearby, they don't scatter at the end of class. They remain together throughout the day, into the evening, really creating an immersive learning and social environment. Jasper also found that Tuck's location and size provided him with amazing access to visiting executives. You won't just hear leading experts and industry speakers in a lecture hall with 1,000 other people. You will personally interact with them in small groups over lunch or dinner, or individually meet with them during office hours. One lunch that he had with the former chair of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission had a really big impact on Jasper. He said over lunch they had a very personal discussion about family, and the chairman's advice reminded Jasper of what's really important in life. That kind of personal interaction with leading executives is something that you're not going to find at every business school. Like Lindsay and Raphael, Jasper took full advantage of his 2 years at Tuck. While at Tuck, he had a big impact within the community as co-chair of Tuck Pride, our LGBT group. He was co-chair of TABA, the Tuck African Ancestry Business Association. He was one of the lead organizers of the National Reaching Out MBA Conference in San Francisco, and he made a huge difference for incoming students as co-chair of the Wall Street Edge program. Wall Street Edge is a student-run program that provides career mentorship and preparation for incoming Tuck students from underrepresented groups interested in financial services. The program was a brainchild of 2 Tuck students a few years ago who saw how the Tuck network could help students even before they arrived on campus. And it has resulted in students getting into pre-MBA boot camps and some even getting summer internship offers before they set foot on campus. Jasper was one of the early beneficiaries of the program and had such positive experience that he signed on to lead it during his second year, paying it forward to the next group of Tuckies. And that notion of pay it forward is something that's really ingrained in the Tuck psyche and why Tuck is renowned for its alumni network. Joining Tuck is not just a 2-year commitment. Tuck alums remain engaged with the school and with each other for life. One way to measure their involvement is Tuck's annual giving rate. For the last 5 years, 70% of Tuck alums have donated to the school. And for those of you who maybe don't work in development, To put this into perspective, not only is that the highest giving rate of any business school, but 70% is almost triple the average of the other leading business schools. Now that's a telling indicator of alumni commitment to their school. But our alums are also incredibly generous with their time. They take your calls, provide advice, make connections, and guide our students through getting jobs at their firms. Jasper experienced the value of the alumni network before he even applied to Tuck. He met an alum during Tuck's diversity conference. They hit it off, and the alum offered to help with Jasper's application. And Jasper told me, I thought the guy was just being polite. But when Jasper followed up with him, they had 4 or 5 conversations about his application. And during his summer internship at Barclays Capital, one of the managing directors, who was a Tuckie himself, had lunch with Jasper several times during the summer to discuss Jasper's experience and provide him with feedback to ensure that he got a full-time offer. And this was outside of Barclays' formal review process, just an example of an alum going above and beyond to help another Tuckie. Other schools will point to the size of their alumni network, and ours is definitely smaller, but you won't find one that is more responsive. And that's why The Economist ranks Tuck's alumni network #1 in terms of effectiveness. The alumni network is a big reason that Tuck students are so successful in career placement. Last year, 99% of our students had full-time job offers within 3 months of graduation, and their average compensation packages put Tuck in the top 3 among business schools. Add to that, 100% of our students had summer internships. So where have the 3 students I've just introduced you to landed? Well, Jasper got that full-time offer, and he's now at Barclays Capital in New York City, where he's part of the investment banking team. Raphael is in Seoul, South Korea, where he's joined the global strategy group at Samsung. And Lindsay is at Amazon in their retail leadership development program in Seattle. And that's just a small sample of the great jobs our students have received. Tuck has active recruiting relationships with more than 900 organizations across a breadth of industries worldwide. And the career development team personally supports students as they navigate through all of those opportunities. The CDO provides one-on-one counseling with students, and the coaches each have experience working in the industries that they're advising students on. So for example, Stephen Pigeon, who coaches students about going into consulting positions, was an engagement manager at McKinsey before coming to work at Tuck. You've heard me mention Access several times during this conversation, and it really applies here to career support too. The career development team is going to get to know you personally, learn your goals, coach you, and advocate on your behalf. Each of our students has a different story to tell, and I wish I had time to talk about all 280 of them. But like Raphael, Lindsay, and Jasper, all of our students experience successes and challenges. What distinguishes Tuck from our peers is the way that you will be supported, encouraged, and stretched by the entire community, faculty, administration, classmates, and alums throughout your 2-year journey and beyond. I hope this has given you a little bit of a feel for what the Tuck experience is all about. Nothing will help you better experience Tuck than coming to visit, and I do encourage you all to visit if you have the opportunity. Tuck has a unique interview policy where if you come to campus, we have an open interview policy. If you come to campus and schedule your interview by the application deadline, you can guarantee yourself an interview, and you don't have to wait to be invited to interview. So I encourage you to come and experience the community here and meet our students and really fully appreciate what the school is like. What I'd like to do now is I'm happy to take any questions that you have about the Tuck program, about the application process, life in Hanover, life for partners, whatever is on your mind. Okay, so the first question I have is, could you speak about the functions of the Career Development Office, or the CDO? So I think one important part to talk about with the CDO is, as I mentioned before, you get that personalized attention at Tuck. And what that means is you're not a number. So everyone in this career office knows who you are, they know what you're trying to accomplish, and work one-on-one with students. So you have that opportunity to sign up and meet with them as often or as little as you want. We have multiple career advisors who all have industry experience, so they can speak from their own experience as well as the connections that they have at Tuck. They will work with students to craft their resume, craft their plan of attack for their career search, help with negotiating and thinking through various opportunities that the students have. One thing that I think differentiates the Tuck career opportunities is the fact that we require all of our on-campus recruiters to reserve half of their interview slots for students to bid on. So unlike at a lot of schools where you submit your resume, and if that company doesn't select you to interview, you've missed out on the opportunity to talk to them. At Tuck, any on-campus recruiter has to save an equal number of slots for students to bid. So if they haven't selected you, you get a second bite at the apple to try and get in front of that employer, and you get 1,000 bidding points at the beginning of the term. And if you have a company that you absolutely want to get in front of, you bid accordingly, and you can make sure that you get in front of that employer to explain why you're great for them. And it's a great opportunity for people who are career switchers, and maybe on the face of their resume, it doesn't necessarily speak to the position. And we find that nearly as many students who bid on those positions are getting offers as the people who were selected by the employers. And then the other thing that the Career Office is doing is helping educate students by hosting panels and office hours to help students learn more about different industries and careers and get more information about particular companies. They're also helping organize career treks. So not only are companies coming to Tuck, and absolutely they come to Tuck. I think that's something that often applicants worry a little bit about, being in a location that's not in a major metropolitan area. The recruiters definitely come to Tuck, and I think our placement stats speak to that. When they're here, they're a captive audience, and so they engage with the students one-on-one and really get that opportunity to meet them and know them. In addition to on-campus recruiting, though, the Career Office helps organize career treks where you are going to either meet with companies in a particular industry or meet with companies in a particular geographic location. And examples of that, there will be a technology trek to the West Coast, or a finance trek to New York City, or we've hosted treks to London, Hong Kong, for students who are interested in positions in those areas. So I have a question about whether Tuck focuses on entrepreneurship. And absolutely, there are lots of opportunities for students who are thinking about going into entrepreneurship and starting their own businesses. So one that I gave you was the example of Jack with Fresh Air Sensor and the support that he received. Tuck also has multiple research centers and initiatives that allow students to really get a deeper exposure to various industries and topics. And one of those research centers is our entrepreneurship initiative. And the initiative does things like bring in entrepreneurs to speak to students so they can learn one-on-one how they went about starting their own businesses and the lessons they've learned. They have a pretty extensive Entrepreneurs in Residence program where they're coming in to talk about what they've done. The center also provides support for students who are actually starting a business, with mentorship from alums, mentorship from faculty. We have an active business incubator that one offered during the summer, which is what Jack did, where the students are provided with a stipend. So they spend the summer on campus. They get a pretty nice stipend, so they're not losing out by not taking an internship during that summer, and spend the summer developing their business on campus. And then there's also an incubator during the second year. In addition to the entrepreneurship resources that are at Tuck specifically, students also have full access to the Dartmouth Entrepreneurial Network, which is Dartmouth college-wide and worldwide, and providing support and mentorship opportunities for students that way as well. So there's a question about what's the best way to get in touch with Tuck alumni if you don't personally know any. And I think you'll find that Tuck alums love to talk to prospective students. So by all means, do reach out and talk to them. If you go to our website, I think that the best way to start is go to our website, and there is a place called Tuck Connection. And it asks you for a little bit of information about yourself. And what we will do with that information is try to match you with an alum who either comes from a similar background or has a similar career path as your interest. And then you'll have that person, then we'll match you with an alum, and you can connect with the alum and speak with that person. So I think that's the best way to start. If you're not having success that way, reach out to us, and we'll certainly try to help facilitate another alum. So the next question we have is, when is the best time of year with respect to the application deadlines for visiting campus? So we offer on-campus visits and interviews throughout the year from mid-September through probably May. If you are applying, so what I encourage you to do is, if it's the year that you are applying, you will want to make sure that you get that on-campus visit and interview completed by the deadline for the round that you're applying. So if you go to our website, you can see what the interview deadline is for each of the 4 rounds. And as long as you get on campus and interview by that deadline, any time up to that point is a great time to visit. Fridays are a little different because we don't offer class visits because students aren't in class on Fridays. So if you absolutely want to get a class visit, then you'll want to schedule your visit another day. Then for those of you who just want to see what the school is like and maybe aren't applying for another year or so, I'd encourage you to come in the spring. During the fall, we need to focus all of our visits on people who are interviewing and save space for them. But in the spring, when people aren't in the application process and interviewing on campus, we have lots of opportunities for students to come, sit in on a class, and all of the visit days, you'll have the opportunity to sit in on a class, have lunch with our students, take a tour of the facilities, and have Q&A with an admissions officer. So the next question is there any particular profile that Tuck looks for in its candidates? No, for the easy answer. When you're thinking about the application process, it is a very holistic process. We are looking at a number of factors. We're looking at academics, we're looking at work experience, leadership, community involvement, interpersonal skills, diversity of experience and background, and global mindset. So all of these different factors are taken together, and there's no one area that's more important than another. We don't weight any of those categories. We don't balance out anything or assign a value to any of them, which means that different people shine for different reasons. So we're really looking for a diverse class. If everybody looked alike, if everybody came from the same background, you wouldn't learn much from each other because everybody's coming from the same perspective. So we really like to see a wide, diverse group of candidates coming in. If I had to pick kind of common characteristics that our students share and that successful students at Tuck share, I would say that within their personalities, they are people who are great team players and who are interested in engaging with their classmates. So Tuck is a small school. You cannot hide. You can't blend into the woodwork. And so you have to be ready to share your experiences and be ready to learn from each other. And you will definitely learn a lot from our faculty, but you will learn as much, if not more, from your classmates. And so we want to see people who are excited to jump in with both feet, to share their experiences, learn from their fellow classmates, and get involved. You saw Lindy's profile and Jasper's profile and the things that they did while they were on campus, and that's normal. So you have to be ready to really get in and contribute and be excited to make Tuck a better place. So the next question is, what is the age consideration for admissions? Is there such thing as a candidate that is too old? We do not consider age at all in our assessment. That's not a part of it. We're looking at the experience that an applicant has had, and I think what's important for every applicant to address, whether you're somebody that's only a couple years out or somebody who is 10 or 15 years out or more, address why now in your career it makes sense to go for a full-time MBA. And so, we're listening. We want to hear your story. We want to see people who have the experience that they're going to contribute and add. For those students who maybe are more advanced in their careers, I do think one thing you might want to address is why taking taking a step out for 2 years and doing a full-time immersive program as opposed to an executive MBA makes sense for you. But age is not something that we are considering. So another question I have is, how are transcripts translated? And so we have applicants from all over the world. What we ask is that what you send us is in English, but do not try to translate the grades themselves. So we want to have the classwork and all of that in English for us, but the grades themselves should be as they're recorded by the institution that you graduated from. So we don't need to see like a WES transcript and trying to put it into a 4.0 scale. We have a lot of experience with a lot of different countries and a lot of different schools on how they grade students. And so if your school grades you on a 100% scale, leave it as a 100% scale, and we will assess it. I think what's important to think about when we're looking at transcripts is we're not solely focused on the overall GPA. We are really taking a dive into your transcript. We're looking at the kinds of classes that you took. Did you challenge yourself? What kinds of quantitative exposure have you had? What kinds of trends we might see in your grades? So hopefully that trend is up, but we're going to look at very deeply into the transcript. So it's not just a matter of what that GPA was at the end of 4 years. So the next question I have is, what do you look for in letters of recommendation? That's a great question. So there's a lot that, first off, the letter of recommendation is about the only part of your application that you are not preparing. So it's giving us that third-party perspective. What you have a lot of control over, however, is in the selection of your recommenders and in helping educate them on you and on quality letters of recommendation. In thinking about who you should choose as your recommender, we want to see professional recommendations. We tend not to get much out of a letter of recommendation from a professor. And then what's most important is that it's somebody who knows you really well. So I would, I think sometimes people get a little caught up and try to get somebody who has the most impressive title in your organization. And that's not as important for us. If the CEO doesn't know you very well, he or she cannot write a very compelling recommendation about you. We want to see somebody who's really worked with you on a day-to-day basis and can speak with specific anecdotes about your strengths and talk frankly about areas where you need to develop. So your immediate supervisor is usually your best go-to person. So I'd encourage you to get at least one from your immediate supervisor. Now, some people are reluctant to tell their employer that they're leaving for business school, and that is fine. We often see that. What I'd encourage you to do in that situation is explain to us briefly in an optional essay why you've chosen the people you have, just so we're not left thinking that there's a problem with your current supervisor. And then instead of that supervisor, think about a past supervisor. That's always a good person to try. Or maybe a senior colleague that you work with very closely, who you feel comfortable revealing that you're going to be applying to business school. Same issue for somebody who's working for a family company, where if your recommender, if your supervisor is your mother or your father or an aunt or uncle, you don't want to have a recommendation from them. So thinking about somebody else who's in a senior position that you work closely with. The most compelling letters of recommendation are ones that provide specific examples. So it's not just enough for someone to say, Bob is a great team player, period. I want to hear Bob is a great team player, and here's an example of what he did. And that is a much more compelling recommendation and really paints a picture of you when we, the admissions committee, are reading your file. So I think somebody who knows you well, who's going to speak in detail about your application or about your qualities, is what we really like to see. So I have a question about scholarships and when scholarship decisions are made and what kinds of international student-specific scholarships are available. So at Tuck, everybody has the opportunity for scholarships. What we do is award our scholarships at the time of admission. So when you are admitted, you will also find out if you received a scholarship. We look at there's no application process to apply for scholarships. We used to have one, but we no longer do. So now what we do is we take everyone who is admitted in that round, and then we review that group of people, applying a very similar evaluation that we do to looking at candidates for admission to Tuck. And among the strongest applicants within that group, we will award scholarships to folks. And it's kind of a combination of need and merit, but I would say it's probably more heavily weighted towards merit. International students are eligible for all of those scholarships as well, and there's no different process for them to be considered for scholarships. On the financial aid topic, for international students, we do offer an international loan program where students can borrow up to the amount of tuition and fees without a U.S. cosigner. So I have a question about the placement rates for international students, and I don't have those exact numbers, but very, very close to, so the overall student profile is 99% within 3 months. That includes international students, and I think the placement rates for internationals versus U.S. students are nearly identical. I apologize, I don't have that number, but if you go to our website, there is within the career section, there is a placement stats for the past class, and you can break it down into lots of information about where students go. It breaks it down to people who have work authorization versus those who don't, and what industries they're going to and types of positions. So that's a great source of information if you're interested in hearing more about our placement stats. So the question I next have is, can you talk about the personal leadership course and how students use what they've learned in the course throughout their time at Tuck, as well as in their professional positions? Sure. So leadership at Tuck is taught in a couple different ways. So like most schools, you will see you're learning about how other people have led, and using case studies and learning from past examples. And you will absolutely learn from past examples of leading executives during the course of the Tuck curriculum. But where Tuck really differentiates itself is teaching leadership that is very personally focused on you. Developing our students' self-awareness about their leadership skills is really critical. And one of the ways that we do that is through the personal leadership course, which is taught during the required core curriculum in the first year. And through that class, students will do a 360 evaluation of themselves. So you will evaluate your strengths and weaknesses as a leader. Your study group mates will tell you what they think about your strengths and weaknesses. And we also go back to your past employers and hear what they thought. And then you get all of this data about your strengths and then the areas that you need to develop. And it allows students to, learn to lead from their strengths and either to work around the areas that they are less strong in, and also giving them the opportunity to develop the skills that they need work on. And you can develop those skills in lots of different ways at Tuck. You've got the Center for Leadership, which provides opportunities for students through workshops and research to develop those leadership skills. But I think more critically is getting that chance to practice your leadership in your day-to-day life at Tuck. And Lindsay is a great example of that. Jasper's a great example in his leadership roles that he took, where you are leading, multiple clubs and conferences throughout your time at Tuck. And, that's when it comes again to being that great opportunity of being a small school, because you have lots and lots of opportunities. You're not competing with 1,000 students for those leadership roles. And our students, everything is student run at Tuck. So we just finished up a Women in Business conference last month, and early this month we had a diversity conference where these are weekend-long events, and they are completely student-led. From all of the programming and marketing and organization, everything is done by students, and they have been working on these conferences since last spring, and it's a great opportunity to really put into practice everything that they've learned. And then that self-awareness and the leadership that you've gotten as a result of putting it into practice at Tuck, absolutely you will use as you go on into your careers. I think where Tuck maybe differentiates itself is the collaborative form of leadership that you get while you're at Tuck. I hear from recruiters, they'll say that where Tuck students differentiate themselves is that they are great team players. So they can take the lead when they need to, but they can also work with anybody. And I think a lot of that comes from the study group experience at Tuck, where you're in a group of typically 6 students, and there's no one person who is designated as the leader. So you're learning to lead within a flat organization. And there's sometimes when you step up and you lead, when you have the strengths and when you have the opportunity. And there are other times when it's more important to take a step back and let somebody else lead. And that experience, working with your classmates in the study group, is a great leadership learning and one that really applies very nicely when you get out into the workforce. So a question about what Hanover is like and what student life is like on campus. So Hanover is sort of the quintessential New England town. It is small. I think if you look at Hanover alone, it's at about 10,000 people. But then if you look at there are multiple towns that are all very close together. You really can't quite tell where one starts and one ends. If you look at the Upper Valley area, it's probably about 50,000 people here. What I think you find is that it is an incredibly welcoming community. There is a lot going on in Hanover, much more so than most small towns in New Hampshire because of the college. So there are, lots of restaurants and arts activities that are hosted by the college. And then, we're kind of in the wilderness. And so the Appalachian Trail runs through town. We are near great hiking, great opportunities on the Connecticut River, cycling. If you like the outdoors, it is a great place to be. Dartmouth has its own skiway, so there's a lot of skiing going on in the area. But it's a fun place to be, and our students really engage in life in Hanover and life at Tuck. It is not a commuter school, so students stay around. There are lots and lots of things going on campus, so I don't think you will ever be bored. really the risk is that you can't do it all, and making those decisions about what you want to do is probably the hardest part of being at Tuck. But there are lots of social opportunities going on at Tuck, lots of educational opportunities, nationality, different kinds of parties. So coming, right around this time is the Diwali party, which is one of the biggest parties at Tuck, and one that all of the student body gets engaged in and behind. There are small group dinners. So there are very large parties with all of the campus. There are small group dinners where, 6 or 10 students will get together and have dinner in a student's home, and just that opportunity to connect and talk. But I think being in a town like Hanover provides students with that focus where you really get to know your classmates very well, because you're living in the dorms together, where you're living very nearby, and you will get to know all 280 students in class very well. And again, that's where you really get that opportunity to learn from each other. And you're not in a big city where you scatter at the end of the day and you go off and do your own thing until it's time for class again the next morning. It's very much a 24/7 immersive environment. So got a question, does Tuck seek candidates with non-traditional backgrounds? Absolutely. So I think I mentioned earlier that we really want to see a diverse student body. If everybody was an investment banker from Wall Street, there's not a lot to learn from each other, because you all have that same perspective. So we want to see the investment bankers, we want to see the consultants, we want to see people with marketing backgrounds, but we want to see people who are high school teachers like Lindsay. We want to see people who come from military backgrounds, people who are artists, people who have been working in technology, who've been in nonprofit. That's really when you have enriching classroom discussions. And so coming at it with lots of different perspectives is really the way that students learn from each other. And we absolutely welcome people with different kinds of backgrounds. So there's a question for international candidates, what will be the best way to compensate the campus visits apart from online events? And so I just talked about coming to campus and taking advantage of our open interview policy. And we recognize that that's not feasible for everybody. And we certainly will not hold that against applicants if they can't make it to campus. What a great way to learn more about the school is through things like online events like we've just had, through the Tuck Connections, where you can connect with an alum and talk to that person. We host admissions events all around the world, so I encourage you to try and go to an admissions reception where you can meet with our alums or meet with an admissions officer or a student and an alum as a way to learn more about the program. The website is also a great way to learn in detail about what's going on campus. And then going back to that open interview policy. So for those of you who are not able to come to campus, what we do is then we're like most of our peer institutions where you apply without the interview, which is fine if that's the situation you're in. We will review your application, and then if we want additional information about your candidacy, we will invite you to interview. Those invitational interviews will either be on campus if you're able to make it, with a traveling admissions representative if that's a possibility, or via Skype. So the next question is, how is community service reviewed during the application process? Does it play an essential role in the admissions process? So community service, and I'll more broadly put that as kind of involvement, extracurriculars. It doesn't have to be community service per se, but it's just outside interests and activities and involvement. It's an important part of the application. We want to see people who, from their past experience, have shown that they're engaged and enthusiastic members of their community and wanting to make a difference and be involved, because those people are likely to be active and involved and engaged when they get to Tuck, and active and involved and engaged after they graduate. So we like to see people who are doing things. We also recognize that not everybody has that opportunity. Some people are working 100 hours a week, and it's really hard to be involved in community activities, or they were working while they were an undergraduate and didn't have that bandwidth to be able to do both work and go to school. So we recognize that not everybody has that opportunity, and it is a part of the application. So as I was saying before, it's a very holistic process, and there are lots of factors that we're looking at. It's one of many factors. It's not make or break, just like none of the other factors are make or break. So here's a good question. I know 2 years goes fast, and many students know exactly what they want to do, going in. But what if you're not 100% sure of your post-MBA career path, and what are your options? So I do think it is important to have a good sense of the general direction you want to go in, because those 2 years do really go fast. I've heard students describe it as drinking from a fire hose. So if you come to business school and you haven't thought about it and you think that you're going to figure it out when you get to campus, you simply don't have time, and you have so many opportunities coming at you that if you don't know which one you want to take, then you've missed the opportunities. So I do think having a sense of, what you like, what you don't like. You don't have to necessarily have that particular career path nailed down, but having a good sense of yourself and a good sense of what you're hoping to go into is important. That said, come in with your eyes open and be open to new opportunities, because there are a lot of people who come in thinking they know exactly what they want to do. And while they're here, they are exposed to different ideas, different industries, different people, and suddenly they really find what they're passionate about. And so you don't want to be so closed off to other opportunities that you're not able to pivot and go into something different. So I do think do some reflection at this point in your career before you start, because you do want to have some sense. If you don't know it precisely, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so this is the last question that I've got, and it's what are my 3 top favorite things about Tuck? It's hard to put it into 3 things. It's and I think probably what comes down to is really the community and the students who are here. So I don't know that I can break that down into 3 things, but it's the opportunity for me as an administrator. I get to meet the students while I'm on the road and recruiting while everybody is an applicant. And it's fun for me because I get to meet people who are at such interesting points in their lives and about to embark on a really exciting time in their careers. I get to know them even better during their 2 years here at Tuck. And the beauty of Tuck is it's a small school, so I still get to see people once they're here. It's not like I admit them and then they go off into the ether and I never see them again. They still come by my office and tell me how they're doing, and I get to see them at events like Tuck Tales and really engage with them and get to know them. And then they graduate and they're not out of touch. I'm on the road and I get to see them at admissions receptions. They come back to campus and visit, and it's the relationships that you develop with the students, I think, is my favorite part about Tuck. And I think the students would probably say the same thing, of being able to develop relationships with their peers, with the faculty and staff, and with the alumni at Tuck. So I think that's all I've got time for today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I do encourage you to continue doing additional research about Tuck. Try to talk to alums, come to our admissions events, and if you're able, please do try to come to campus and see it firsthand. So thanks so much for everything, and I hope to see you either on campus or on the road sometime soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.